Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2109. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Seattle, Washington, just a little north of where I live in Gig Harbor with a very special friend of mine by the name of Doug Andreassen. Doug, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I have got my harness strapped down. I am ready to go, Mark.
All right. We'll have some fun today talking about Porsches and Porsche Club and all that. But before we begin, you know what I always ask everybody, Doug. Tell us one little thing about you that maybe most people don't know.
Yeah, I was a key stakeholder in the Youth Concussion Bill passed in 2009 in the Washington State Legislative Session. It was the only bill to pass the legislative session 98-0. To encourage the safety of concussions with youth athletes. The bill then went on to be passed in all 50 states to help protect the youth from concussions in athletic events.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you something interesting about this. I have a friend that I grew up with, saw him or knew him in junior high and high school. He went on to still is very professional in business, but he's created a lot of different things in his life. And one of them was a helmet type device that kids wore when they played soccer, because he said, you know, the most common head injury in soccer is concussions. And I went, concussions? Wouldn't that be like regular football? He goes, no, their heads aren't protected and they whack into each other because always looking down at the ball. And he had a daughter who got a bad concussion, and he designed this little helmet. It's kind of like a simplified bicycle helmet that kids would wear that would cut down on their concussions. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
I have. I come from the volunteer world of the soccer community and very much involved in that over the course of my life. And what got me interested in this was a friend of mine's son suffered a TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, from concussion playing youth football. And we quickly found out that there was nothing protecting these kids from concussions. And I looked at my own sport that I love of soccer, and I said the same thing. And I said, well, we have to do something about that. So it's been a long journey. As I said, from 2009, I'm happy to say we've got laws passed in all 50 states. The unfortunate thing about that is the laws passed in 47 of those states are named after students who have passed away from concussions.
Oh, goodness. Wow. Yeah, you just don't think of soccer as being, a deadly sport compared to football, of course, where you think is, pretty violent might be a strong term, but it is pretty violent. Yeah, soccer can be super dangerous. So, well, congratulations. That's very cool. I didn't know that about you either. So, very cool.
Yeah.
I love it. So let me give you a proper introduction. Doug Andreassen is currently serving as president of the Pacific Northwest Porsche Club, a position that he's held for 4 years. He has served on the PNWR board in various positions prior to being elected president. Doug is also currently serving as the vice president for the Tacoma Historical Society and the chair of the Metropolitan Parks and Recreation Business Advisory Committee. I see a little trend with you, Doug. He also serves in the Metropolitan Park Watch Program to improve safety in a beautiful Point Defiance Park, which is very near my home. It's a wonderful place. Doug is past president of Washington Youth Soccer. There's that soccer again. 8 years as president, 15 years on the board, and he served in various capacities for U.S. Soccer, the United States Youth Soccer Association. He was former chair of the U.S. Soccer Diversity Task Force. Doug's career has also included a wide variety of companies and ventures and he is the co-owner of Andreassen Property Development and Northwest Publishing Arctic Printing Company. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our valued sponsor, so give them a little love. They're the reason we're here today, and we will be right back. Covercraft's newest 3-layer all-climate cover is especially engineered for moderate weather conditions, and it's treated with an extra UV-resistant formula. It's soft, it's breathable, and it's easy to store, all while pampering your paint, providing maximum UV, rain, and dust protection. If you live where it's windy, no worries. Simply add their gust guards for windy conditions to add extra protection to keep your cover in place. Your 3-layer all-climate cover is custom-tailored with Covercraft's attention to detail, form and fit with the quality and attention to detail that's been their tradition since 1965. Covercraft protects cars, trucks, motorcycles, RVs, trailers, and watercraft too. Every one of my vehicles is protected with a Covercraft cover. And I have a deal for you. Use the code YEAH21, YEAH21 at covercraft.com, and you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order plus free shipping. That's right. So get 10% off with free shipping by simply using the code YEAH21 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. When it was time to renew my collector car policy, my carrier raised my rates by a lot. But why? My usage was the same, my car's value was the same, and I had never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. The only change was their rate, and they had no reason why. What's with that? I researched my options. I spoke to others. What a difference. A live person actually answers the phone. She spent time learning about me and provided a reasonable quote. Why wait until your next premium is due? Give them a call today for your personal agreed value quote. Call 866-AC1-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of mine, Mark Green at Cars Yeah. American Collectors Insurance, classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors, automotive enthusiasts just like you and me. That's American Collectors Insurance. So, Doug, let's dive a little deeper into the corner since we're talking about Porsches, which are so much fun to drive. And what I really wanted to focus on with you today is Porsche Club and car clubs in general. You and I have been friends for a while now, and you've worked very hard with our local Porsche Club to be more inclusive and bring more people into the club as us more mature guys. Now, I'm only speaking for myself, not for you, Doug. Us more mature guys are aging out. We're, in some cases, passing on. And if we don't start bringing in different diverse groups of people, i.e. younger people, women, people of color, maybe these clubs aren't going to be around much longer. So let's talk about, first and foremost, your passion for being on boards, being in clubs, helping people. I mean, this seems to be a key attribute in your life. And, you know, as I read through what I was reading, I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's got companies. How do you manage your time, my friend? I don't know how you do it.
Mark, I live by a motto, and that motto is, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? And so I live by that motto in my life. I was brought up by some parents who very much believed in volunteering in the community. As a young man, I picked up garbage around soccer fields before we played the game. And I used to complain about my father on Saturday mornings at 6 a.m. when he'd wake you up and say, we're going to go down and pick up trash around the field. I go, Dad, the game doesn't start till 9 o'clock. Let me sleep in. And he'd say, if you don't pick up the field and clean it, who's gonna play on the field? And don't you want to have a better block, a better neighborhood, a better community if you pick up the trash and be a volunteer in the community? Give back to the community what the community has given to you. And so I've used that motto in my life, Mark, to serve on, as you have heard, many boards, many positions. And the car clubs is certainly one of the strong passions I have in my life today.
And you and I share a passion for cars and more specifically the Porsche brand. I've been a member of the Porsche Club since, I think, junior high. My good friend Bobby Schmidt and I joined the club together, and I remember one of us, I think it was me, had to change our name because spouses were free, so we didn't have to each join because we didn't have too much money. So we always joke that I was his wife way back when. We joined the club, and way back when went to the events and things. We didn't have Porsches, of course, but we sure enjoyed it. The Porsche Club is not unlike so many clubs because as us baby boomers are aging, these clubs have kind of been the same. And I experienced this being here in the Pacific Northwest for almost 30 years now, that I've gone through variations in time with the club where I was involved and I wasn't involved and I got back involved. And I think about why I wasn't involved, and there was a variety of reasons, but one of them was, well, this group is so focused on just one thing that I like to do some other stuff. And I think that eventually changed. But I'd love to get your impressions, and then we'll talk more in depth of some of the things you've done specifically to help improve the club and, more importantly, bring more people into the club so that it'll continue long after you and I are pushing walkers around with flames painted on the side.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. The Porsche Club, I love the marquee, I love the brand, I love the cars as well. And like you, I've been a member of the club for a long time. And at one point I looked around the room and I said, if we don't get involved and make some changes here, back to my motto, if not me, then who can be involved in the club to make these changes? And so I raised my hand in the back of the room and I said, I will run for a position on the board, and let's help to really grow this club in our area. And I have done that since that time. And we've been blessed in our Pacific Northwest Porsche Club with some tremendous growth, by the way.
No kidding. One of the things that you and I spoke about a couple of years ago was we have all the clubs have magazines, if you will, they would mail out, and ours was called Spiel, and it had been wonderful. It had been done by pretty much the same people for a long, long time, but it was kind of due for a refresh. And I really want to thank you because you tapped on my shoulder because of my graphic design background to give some opinion and look at some ideas that you were looking at. But as we all know, making change sometimes is very difficult. So one thing I admire about you is you have a way about you of introducing things that are different and change. And then you have a very, I don't know what the right way to say this, delicate hand, I guess, of working through that process versus sometimes people come in and they strong arm and they bully and they like, this got to happen. And they just put, I'm the president, I will make these decisions. You're quite the opposite. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you have implemented with the club that have worked very well, and not only with Spiel, with a design change, because not just that's going to do it, but it's more about the stories that are in there, right? And the people that we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. With any newsletter or any publication of any organization you belong to, Mark, it is the face of their organization. No matter how much people might say, well, that isn't the way our operation looks or the way it is. In fact, when people read it, that's their first impression of the car club or of the train club or whatever club you might belong to as well. And when I looked at our magazine, I said, there's something missing here. And what's missing is the stories behind the cars. The common denominator is we all love Porsches. We all love their cars. You can go up and talk to anybody about their particular car, and they'll tell you why they love their Porsche. What I said, let's find the stories behind it. And part of the difficulty in changing the culture of the club is, as you say, you don't want to go in and strong arm people. You want to go in and be cooperative, be collaborative. You want to solicit ideas from other people, not only on your board, but in your community about how do you make changes and what would they like to see in the club and in the publication. And so we began down that route in changing our club newsletter. And it went from something where I would talk to many people in our club and they would, did you get the Spiel magazine this month? And they said, you know what, Doug, I did. Thank you very much. I don't read it. It goes in the trash. Well, why does it go in the trash? People would say there's not a lot of content there that I'm interested in. I frankly don't have time to look at it. And I began to ponder that question and say, well, why does that magazine end up recycled before it gets read? And as I started to really dive into the magazine, I realized that it's happening because the articles don't have the interest that people want to read. What we did is I developed our Spiel team with different people from different backgrounds, different genders, and I said, let's get together and talk about this and figure out how do we change this magazine to make it fit our club. And as in any club, you have members that are, quote, baby boomers. You have members that are older than the baby boomer generation that are still around. And you also now have these younger members that are coming into the club, either the generation behind us or in some cases, 2 generations behind us are coming into the club now. And how do you interest that person from Gen X that are coming into the club? What interests them in one, getting the magazine, and 2, reading it? And that was the task that we looked in front of us to say, how do we do that?
Well, another part of this, I would assume, is also the advent of the internet and how that's used. And many of these clubs that are run by, let's say, again, more mature folks, I'll just mention myself, maybe aren't as adept using social media, different apps and things like that. So they just stick to the magazine, whereas young people, and I'll give you an example, I used to get like 40 car magazine subscriptions every month. And my kids would look at this stack of magazines and go, Dad, why do you still read magazines? And I'd look at them and go, what are you talking about? Well, everything that's in those magazines is old news. Like it came out on this device, Dad, this little thing called a phone that you pay for. Thank you very much. And I eventually got rid of almost all my car magazines. I think I only get like 5 now. And because for the same reason, I just wasn't looking at them anymore. They weren't keeping up with the times. And I would assume you were discovering the same kinds of things in addition to the fact that younger people, there's nothing in there that interests them. And this is kind of a segue into Cars and Coffee concept. The reason Cars and Coffee, I think, have exploded across the country in the last 5, 6, 10 years is because you get to meet the people at the events in addition to the cars. But in these publications, it was all the vehicles and no people, right?
Yes, and we kind of thought the same thing. And Mark, there will always be a segment of our population who will always want to read the publication on their mobile device. There's no question about that. We don't ignore that in the newsletter that we produce. Our magazine, we produce a digital edition for that crowd as well. And Mark, I have members that call me and say, Doug, don't send me the print edition. Just send me the digital edition. That's all I want. The print edition clogs up my mailbox. It lays on my counter. I don't read it. But I do read the digital edition, so we do a digital edition as well. But what we have found lately, Mark, is that now people are saying, hey, I like to look at the print edition because I can carry it with me. I can look at it at various locations. It's a little bit easier for me to understand the way the publication is put together. And I think that's very important. It's a very tactile feeling to be along to the club, to hold that in your hand. But what we also did with the publication was that we said, what do people read? And when you look at our kids, for example, and what do they read? They no longer read long stories that are 3,000 words, 5,000 word, 10,000 word articles. That's not what their world is like. The information comes to them in very short information bites. And so we said in the magazine, let's reduce the articles to 500 to 750 words, maybe 1,000 words, but let's make the pictures larger. Let's make them more graphic oriented. Let's put color into the magazine as well, because that draws people to the magazine. Now when you pick up Spiel magazine, now you can read an article in probably 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer in some cases, depending what the interest is in the magazine. And that has increased readership. People will now bring that magazine to a Cars and Coffee event, and I might go out and they'll come up to me and say, Doug, I read the article, in your June edition about this. And they'll show me the magazine, and I'm glad that they have read it, and it shows a lot of interest. So it shows a real trend to not produce a publication that has such intense copy as well as graphics. But let's make them loose, let's make them light, and that's what the result has been.
Well, definitely. And I think part of that, the reasoning for that is we are inundated with information now. There's so many things to look at. It was like the old days with three TV channels and a couple magazines, and that's it, and that's all you had to do. Maybe sometimes I feel like I'd like to go back to those days so I don't have all these distractions. But but that's the way it is, and that's the way people like to get their information. Well, I just, I've said this to you because you and I have talked a lot about this, that I think what you've done, and your team more importantly, because you put together a really wonderful group of people. It's not just you, obviously, it's this team of people. And I like the lifestyle type stories. The most recent one was about a father and son, and the Mama Green Macan, and it was like, okay, I can relate to this versus just reading about the new Macan or any other car. So I think you've taught other clubs some things, and have you experienced from other clubs any kind of feedback in a positive sense that, maybe we should be doing this as well?
Yeah, Mark, as we started this conversation, you mentioned that change is hard, and this has certainly been hard, not only with our own club, but putting this magazine out from a nationwide perspective as well. And it took a year or so before people really started to understand what we were doing with the magazine. And when you do a magazine for your club, you've got to realize you have this wide demographic curve, and you have to really appeal to everybody in that demographic curve. And how do you do that? And so you have to have a variety of stories. And soon our magazine got attention from other Porsche clubs around the country. And what's happened is those people started calling me saying, how did you do this article? Why did you do this article? Why is this on your cover? And a lot of questions, and it began to really generate a lot of interest from other clubs around the country. Nice. Now, there's many clubs in the country that imitate what PNWR does, and I take that as a high compliment. I think that's very complimentary of our organization. And so now you look at the Chicago, or you look at the Potomac region and Upper Canada, their magazines are starting to reflect what PNWR is doing, and that is articles about people and stories. And so the story you mentioned was A very fascinating story to me, and I get a lot of people that call me up or email me every week and say, hey, look at the picture of my Porsche at Mount Rainier. Look at the picture of my Porsche when I drove down to Monterey or I went to San Diego, wherever they might be. And Mark, they're gorgeous pictures. The cars are absolutely stunning. But I always ask the next question, what's interesting about that car to you? Why did you buy that model? Why do you like to drive the 993 or the 997 or the Turbo, whatever it is that you like? Tell me the interest in how you acquired that car and what really interests you in that car. And soon you uncovered a whole story about that car. And then the story became very interesting to people.
Yeah.
So many times when you go to Cars and Coffee and you look at that Mama Green Macan, you go, why would that guy buy a Mama Green Macan? I don't like the Mama Green, somebody might say. Well, you read the article and you find out that green was very much interesting in this guy's family history. So now you read the story behind the story, or as those of us from the baby boomer generation used to listen to Paul Harvey, and it was, now you hear the rest of the story, right?
I loved those. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, and I can't tell you the people that come up to us now that they have, and they might have known a club member for 25 years in some cases, or 30 years in one case. Of a member who called me and said, I never knew that person's background. He was always interesting. Always wondered why he drove that yellow Porsche. What is it about the yellow Porsche? I never figured out. Now I know. And the people have called us up, emailed us, and said, thank you very much for telling that story.
Yeah. Well, my hat's off to you and your team again of what you guys have done. It's been really, really fascinating, great. And I know it took some time, but, all good things do take some time. I love to ask my guests about what I call driving inspirations, people that were mentors or influencers in your life that helped you out. Was there somebody like that in your world?
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about a mentor in my life that's not really car-related, but has become a strong mentor. When I was a young man, I worked for a gentleman who was a quadriplegic. He was injured in a military accident, unfortunately. And what this man accomplished in his life was amazing as a quadriplegic. He ended up running for a city council position where he was very influential. He ran for a park board commissioner, which was very influential in what he did in the community. And it taught me that there's nothing that you can't do as an able-bodied person compared to what this person was able to do. I was so very much impressed by his work ethic and his business ethic and his love of life in his position. And that was really a good mentor for me as an early part of my life. This was all before the American Disabilities Act was passed. So my job was to drive him around and get him into locations in his wheelchair. And before we had the American Disabilities Act, it was curbs were problems. Double doors in restaurants were problems. Steps to get into buildings that had steps and no elevators were problems. And the list goes on. And so we went to work and with Congress and helped develop the American Disabilities Act. And I went back to Congress with him a number of times. Again, this is back in 1976. Congress building had no elevator to bring this citizen into the building. I had to pull him up in a wheelchair on all of those steps in front of the Capitol so he could testify before the Senate on American disabilities and how every American should have access to it. So this gentleman was a mentor to me from day one. It was just absolutely amazing. I think of him often. He's passed away, but I often think when I have difficult times and I look around and I go, why can't I do this? Or I'm going to stop doing it. I think of this gentleman and I go, look what he did. I can do this. I can do the same thing.
Oh, no doubt. Wow. What a great experience to have, especially as a young person. So often we get caught up in the little trivial things that upset us every day, and to take a moment and do a little paradigm shift as to what other people are having to deal with around the world or just down the street or across the street wakes you up a little bit and gives you a little bit of gratitude for the fact that you didn't have to deal with that. So great story. We're going to take a short break. We'll thank our sponsors. We come back. We have the challenge question for you. So sit tight. We'll be right back. You listeners know I've been into car care my entire life. I am so excited to team up with AutoGeek in 2022. AutoGeek.net has been a leading source of auto detailing products, accessories, and expert knowledge for more than 20 years. What started in 1997 as a mail-order catalog company has grown into a multi-website based e-commerce store that they are today. With a large online presence on its own website featuring close to 100 different brands, AutoGeek has grown to be the largest car care retailer in the country. AutoGeek's wholesale program serves accounts in over 30 countries, and its retail sector ships worldwide. Go to AutoGeek.net for the best product selection on the internet today and their stellar technical support. AutoGeek.net. It's where I go for all my detailing needs. That's AutoGeek.net. Linkage. It's a new quarterly publication and website that covers the automotive market, driving, restoring, collecting, and discovering your passion for motor vehicles. Linkage is about experiences, opinions, and values. Linkage is an actual informed, reasoned opinion based on first-hand experiences. A talented linkage team covers the automotive world, the people who share your passion and mine, smart, considered, rational, and experienced opinions, ones you can learn from and grow. That includes our passion that drives auctions and the collector car market. So come with me and join us on this journey. And be sure to use the code CARSYEAH when you subscribe, and they'll give you $10 off. Boom! Linkage, geared for the automotive life. Subscribe today at linkagemag.com. 20, 50, or 100 years from now, will there be a workforce to care for the collector vehicles we love? With auto shop programs disappearing across the country, it's a question we enthusiasts have to ask. That's why I support the RPM Foundation, which exists to ensure that the critical skills necessary to preserve and restore these vehicles aren't lost to time. One of the many ways RPM, which is short for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship, is accomplishing this goal is through workforce development initiatives. The RPM Apprenticeship Program enables the next generation of artisans to earn a living while they learn the craft of restoring and preserving these vehicles directly from industry professionals. The Endangered Skills Program documents the process of masters training future craftspeople on a variety of critical skills in danger of being lost forever. For more information on how the RPM Foundation is driving the future of the collector vehicle skills trade, visit RPM Foundation today. They're one of the charities of choice here on Cars Yeah! So, Doug, the challenge question here on Cars Yeah! Is really more about what it taught you, just like that experience with your friend that you helped with the America's Disability Act. I'd love for you to share a really challenging time in your life, maybe even a big, huge failure, but more importantly, what was that lesson that it taught you that you carried forward in a positive way?
This is an interesting question. Running businesses and owning businesses has presented a lot of challenges to me, and as I thought about this question, my answer really came down to a personal challenge, and that was I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2002. I underwent 3 years of a challenging life, attempting to survive prostate cancer using every method except within surgery. And Mark, it was some dark days in my life, and you get to a point you're wondering, do I want to live this way with what was being done with radiation and chemotherapy and so forth to me? And it was a real struggle for me with everything that I had in my life being successful in some businesses and other ventures. I was not sure I was going to live to see the sun rise the next day. And when you start to live that way, it's a downhill slide. But let me tell you something that really changed my life in addition to the prostate cancer, which I fortunately enough survived, obviously. One day I was in the hospital, Mark. I was undergoing some pretty arduous treatment. One of my sons came in to talk to me that day. He was fairly young at the time, I think he was probably 15 years of age. And he looked at me. We had a discussion about life, and he sees his father in bed. I'm sick. I've lost a lot of weight. All the symptoms that you certainly think of people are going through some severe degrees with cancer. And he asked me this question. He says, "Dad, how many summers do you have left?"
Wow.
Mark, I got the question. I was mad at him, and I said, "What do you mean, how many summers do I have left?" I was really upset with him, and I said, "Of all the things we can talk about, you ask me how many summers do you have left?" And after he left that day, Mark, I thought about that for the next couple of days, and I still think about it. In fact, I printed that out. It's at my desk in all my locations that I work. And I live my life as to how many summers do I have left. And so the challenge was not only to survive cancer, but and live another day to see the sunrise. But the challenge is make the most of your life. How many summers do you have left?
Wow, that's powerful. Wow, what an insight your son had. Much less to probably put more. I wouldn't say you didn't have drive to live in your life, but to turbocharge it. We'll talk Porsche here, right? I mean, it's like you have more days. You've got to make them happen. Wow, that's powerful. Holy cow. What a inspiring story. Incredible young man you've raised there. That's pretty darn cool. Well, that's a great segue to my next question, and that is a bucket list. Now, I know that you're the kind of guy, in fact, last weekend you took some young people up to the top of Mount Rainier. Did you guys do that?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
You did, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, very successful.
I'll tell you, listeners, I've become friends with Doug, and sometimes I'll call and he'll go, sorry, I'm halfway up El Capitan. I can't talk right now, or, yeah, I'm going to take a bunch of kids. I can't join you at the car show this weekend. I'm taking a bunch of youth up to the top of Mount Rainier. I mean, you're a guy that loves to really get out in nature a lot. Is there, or are there some big, hairy, audacious accomplishments you still like to have in these upcoming mini summers that you have in your life ahead?
I've been fortunate that I've had the opportunity to travel around the world. I've seen a lot of spots that most people may not get a chance to see. My father was in a construction business and built commercial structures all over the world, and so I had a chance to travel with him. And so while travel is certainly high on my list from a bucket list, my own bucket list defines really, and I said this earlier, if not me, who, and if not now, when. And my bucket list really is to help the underserved communities. And I'm very passionate about that. You see that in my list of items that I volunteer for. Everything that I do, I look at those people in the underserved communities, Mark, and I go, how can I help them advance their lives? What can I do to help them? It could be a number of things. And so while a bucket list is easy to have of a travel or maybe a challenge or something that you'd like to accomplish, I say to myself, my bucket list is I want to help underserved communities. That is also in front of me every day at my office.
You've figured out the secret sauce to life. Now, surviving cancer and being faced with your own mortality is certainly eye-opening, and I'm sure that even gave you more stronger urge to do more with every moment of your day. But what you just shared with me is something, and my listeners have heard me say this before, it's the discovery of what makes us happy as human beings. And I've learned this from so many people, and you're just another wonderful example, is that when we figure out a way to help others, that is when we are happiest in our life. And for some people, it takes a long time for them to figure that out. Some people don't even realize that they're doing it, and that's why they feel good about it. And of course, there's others who perhaps were taught by their parents at a young age, sounds like you were, that giving back and helping people is really why we exist as human beings. So you have definitely figured out the secret sauce to life, my friend.
Well, it's becoming an advocate for those who do not have advocates. Mm-hmm. And there's things that I can do in my position, Mark, that others cannot do in the underserved communities. People will listen to me that they will not listen to others. I've got a lot of contacts in a lot of different levels of politics and other areas that I can be a voice for those folks and say, let me help correct something that's in their lives or in their community or something that can make those people's lives better as well. So, and I'm a very much strong believer in that and helping those underserved communities.
How would you help somebody who says, well, gosh, I don't have your position of power, Doug, or I don't have enough money or whatever it might be to do the same thing, but they have a wish or a desire to do that? How would you suggest somebody start?
I say starting by volunteering in your community. Look around your community and get some tools, and people like myself can help you get those tools that will help you become a success in finding whatever your challenge might be. And so it's not sitting at home and saying, woe is me, or I don't have the money, I don't have the contacts that Doug has, but it's how do I get some of those things and how do I learn? And it's not just being involved, Mark, but it's about reading. It's about getting involved. It's about understanding the way things work and the way to make things operate. As we talked about earlier in the interview, when you get on a volunteer board, and it's not about coming in and strong-arming, it's about learning how to be collaborative. So I would tell that person, let me help you provide you some tools, or as I call it, some arrows in their quiver that they can pull out at any given time to help them find out how to make that challenge and how to meet that challenge in life.
Well, it could start with going down to your local playground early in the morning and picking up trash so the kids don't have to play around that trash when they get to the playground.
That's right.
Later in the day. So you shared that story earlier. Let's talk about a special vehicle, because this is Cars Yeah, of course, although you've shared some wonderful things. Yep. Is there one special vehicle in your life that really has stood out for you?
Mark, this is a hard one, being car people like you and I are.
I know.
This is a really, really hard question, to say the least. My favorite vehicle is a car I still have today. It's a Porsche 2.0 that I bought when I was 18, Mark. I had walked by the dealership, or the Porsche dealership, or rode my bike by a Porsche as a young man, and always would stop and look in the windows, Mark, over the course of time. And when the 914 came out, it came out about the time I was hitting that age of my life, and I thought, that is a really cool car. And I walked into the dealership, and I said, what's that cost? And he told me. I thought, oh, my gosh, I don't know how I'll ever be able to afford this car. Well, I was fortunate enough that I took a vocation. I was able to get some money at commercial fish for a while. And after a while, almost a summer or a season, as we called it then, I had enough money to go back to the dealer. And I'll never forget the day, Mark. I walked in the showroom floor. I was 18 and a half years old, and said, I want that baby blue Porsche 914 2.0.
Yeah.
Never took me seriously, Mark. I was young, as you can appreciate. I understand the salesman's perspective at the time. And he said, well, young man, this costs X amount of dollars. I had cash in those days, Mark. I said, is this enough money? I pulled out of my bag, and I put the cash on the table. I go, I think this is enough. I've counted it. And he looked at it and he goes, yeah, that is enough to buy this car. And I purchased a 914. It's a very special car, Mark. I still have it today. I absolutely love the 914s just for a lot of reasons. It came from an era when I was just coming into the cars. And I absolutely love the car, so I still have it today.
So a 2.0, would that be a 73?
Yeah, 73, yeah.
Yeah, I had one in the same color. So there you go. Bought that for my son and brought it home. My wife goes, no, that's not going to be his first car. That's crazy. It's so little, everybody in their SUV is going to drive right over the top of him. No airbags. No, that's not going to happen. So he got to learn to drive it in the parking lot before he turned 16, and we sold it. And yeah, I always liked that car. It was pretty fun. But yeah, fishing. I had a chance to go fishing one summer. There was a big tuna fleet down in San Diego when I was a kid, and I used to detail all these Portuguese tuna fishermen's cars, and they always had nice cars. And I got invited to spend one summer, and my mom went 3 months out at sea fishing. Nope, that's not going to happen either. He goes, you could make enough money to buy a Porsche. But she didn't want me going off fishing for the summer, so I stuck with detailing cars at home. Didn't quite make as much as catching big tuna, but oh well. So you were a little more fortunate. Now I'm going to be your car psychologist. I'm going to crawl into your skull here, Doug. If you were manifest or reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be and why?
Mark, you're going to find my answer to this very interesting because you and I have been friends for some time, and you certainly know my love of cars, but I think this might surprise you. That car to me would be a 1970 Boss 302 Mustang.
Okay, yeah, now I'm confused.
Yep.
Why?
So, Mark, we grew up in the Trans Am era.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to go to track, watch the Trans Am cars race. I certainly loved what we called imports in those days. The Porsches would race. But when those Boss 302 Mustangs came out, it was just, it captured my heart. And my favorite driver all time was Parnelli Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to watch those races, Mark. I would travel to California with my father to Riverside and the other great racetracks. And the racing that was between Parnelli Jones and George Foamer was absolutely legendary to me in every aspect of the words. I love the way Parnelli Jones drove that Boss 302 in the track. If you look at the old pictures, the car he was hitting the curbs. He was doing whatever he could. He was driving door to door, racing many times with the great names of Trans Am and certainly George Foamer as well. The race I really recall, Mark, about this car was October 4th, 1970, was the final race of the Trans Am Series was at Riverside, by the way, area you might be familiar with.
Oh, yes.
But the championship came down to the two Boss Mustangs between Foamer and Parnelli Jones. And those folks raced door to door. I read the comments years after from the Ford executives going, we just hope these guys finish the race and don't knock each other out.
Yeah.
It was such great racing to watch these two legendary drivers, race these cars. And as you might recall, George Foamer's car had a mechanical, so he was in the pits, and Parnelli Jones went on to win the Trans Am Championship that year. With the Ford executives in the pits, you've got to imagine these people just cringing like, oh my God, what's going to happen with this, right?
Yeah, it's like Ferrari faces Ford, the movie, Yeah.
So, the question is, what car? Well, it would certainly be that Boss 302. I live my life to some degree when I think about that story with Parnelli Jones in the car and how it was run despite the obstacles that Parnelli Jones had with the car and the mechanics and everything else was on the track. And, of course, those were the great years of the Javelins raced by Mark Donohue, right?
Yeah.
All the other great cars in those Trans Am series. And I just admired Parnelli Jones, in ways he was able to do with that car. And so to answer your question, yeah, what car would I be? I'd be the Boss 302 Mustang.
That bright yellow Mustang. Very
Yep,
cool.
the bright yellow Mustang. Yep,
I love it. Well, I'm going to skip this next question because we've already talked at length about all the many ways you give back. I always like to ask people that. I mean, you found numerous ways you continue to make that the core element of your life, and my hat's off to you for that. How about sharing a great book?
I'm an avid reader. I read between 50 and 70 books a year.
Wow.
I absolutely love reading. And so again, when you ask to pick your favorite car, you pick your favorite child, you pick your favorite book is kind of in those categories. I mean, I picked 2 books, by the way. I'm going to give you 2 books.
Okay.
One book I've absolutely loved, and that is Amazon Unbound, and it was written by Brad Stone. It's about the invention of the global empire that was built by Jeff Bezos. If you want to see insight into how Amazon was built and the way they think and the way they operate and the way they dominate the market today, it is an absolutely amazing book to see how this man built this company, what he thought about, how he went about it, and how he faced the competition. So Amazon Unbound, I would encourage people to read. If you're looking for a good business book, this is a great business book to read.
Cool. I've not read that. I'll add it to the list.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It's a big book, but I encourage people to take time to read it if you really want to learn about business. I think that's a remarkable one. It'll help you understand the way that Amazon works in the fields that they're in. The other book I like, and I'm all about kindness. I think we need to be kinder to people, especially in the country today. There's a local author rather, by name is Shelby Van Pelt. Turns out she's from Tacoma. I didn't know that the first time, by the way. But the book she wrote was called Remarkably Bright Creatures. The book is about an octopus and its relationship with caretakers. It teaches us about kindness. It teaches about helping others. It's just a remarkable book to enjoy. So as I look at my business library and I look at the host of other nonfiction and fiction books that I have, I read this book about remarkably bright creatures. And yes, it's about an octopus, but it's about being kind. It's about how you have that relationship and with others. And it's just an absolutely fascinating book, a quick, easy read.
You know, that's fascinating. I would assume then you've seen the documentary My Octopus Teacher?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And that was, I'll have to read the book too, but I tell you, I don't eat octopus anymore after watching that. Those creatures are, they're incredible. And, you know, I eat some meat. I prefer fish, but I can't eat octopus anymore after that. That's just, those things, I just don't understand how something that looks like that can be so darn smart. It's just, that was mind-boggling to me. So I look forward to getting a copy of that book and reading it for sure. So before I let you go today, Doug, we're going to go on the ultimate drive. Now, I know you've traveled a lot. You've been around a lot. You've driven lots of very cool cars. Today, I'm going to give you any car in the world. Doesn't matter how expensive or what it is or who owns it. I'm going to park it in your driveway. You get to go for a drive with anybody on the planet, even somebody who's passed. So what does the ultimate drive look like for you?
Mark, my ultimate drive would be with Ayrton Senna.
Oh.
I have been a Senna fan all my life as well, and as many of your guests are probably Senna fans as well.
Me too.
Ayrton Senna owned a number of cars, and one of them that he owned was a 1987 Esprit, Lotus Esprit. And I used to see pictures of Ayrton Senna driving his Lotus Esprit, I think probably when he drove for Lotus at the time, early in his career. And I always have loved those Esprits, to say the least. And what I would really like to do with Ayrton Senna was I'd love to take a car like that and drive on a track in the rain.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Ayrton Senna was such an amazing driver in so many ways, but his skills on the track in the rain were just second to none, at least from my perspective. And I think we rarely see drivers like that who can drive in those wet conditions, and they would relish, Ayrton Senna would relish when it would rain because he was such a good driver.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the car. That's my driver. That's my car. I'd love to be in with him and just see how he drives that 1987 Esprit.
Yeah, maybe he could take you on a few laps around Spa. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, Mark, I would absolutely love about it. And the last part of that question, Mark, is I would love to talk to Ayrton Senna about his work in the underserved community around the world. I think perhaps, as you know, and maybe others know, Ayrton Senna donated a lot of money to underserved communities. His foundation, at one point, he donated $400 million to help in the underserved communities, both in Brazil and other countries around the world. And he did this without a lot of fanfare, didn't appear in a lot of articles what his donations were or why he did it. But I would love to hear from Ayrton Senna at the top of his career about his love of the underserved communities and why he did that.
Well, you can still find, there still is the Ayrton Senna Institute where they help people. And of course, coming from the country he came from where there was a lot of extreme poverty and people that really needed a lot of help. Yeah. And looking back on the time, and perhaps nowadays it may have been more well known because there's more communication methods, but you talk to people, sometimes they go, I didn't know he did that. I had no idea that he did that. So, but that's how great people do give. They don't do it in a way to support themselves. They do it sometimes in a quiet way to help others. So what a great answer to that question. You've got a lot of great answers. You've taken us on a fun drive today. I knew this would be great, and I'm so happy that we got to spend a little time here together. Before I let you go, could you share some words of wisdom, advice, or maybe some inspiration for our listeners?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Benjamin Franklin. I've read a lot about Benjamin Franklin. I've collected some Benjamin Franklin memorabilia in my lifetime. He said a number of very interesting things, Mark. One thing that he says that I have in front of my desk, I have a lot of things in front of my desk for inspiration is what I have, and it keeps me inspired to do what I do. And he says this, he said, tell me and I forget. Teach me and I will remember. Involve me and I will learn.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you think about that and how that can manifest in your life or other lives, and it really is true as much as it was in Ben Franklin's time as it is today. And so I love that motto that I have in front of my desk. And right below it, by the way, my other motto I love is from Dr. Seuss, and he said this: don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Absolutely. Dr. Seuss. What a great one. How can people learn more about Porsche Club of America and the Pacific Northwest Porsche Club?
Thanks, Mark, for that question. You can certainly go to our website at PNWR.org, and you can see a complete list of who we are and what we do. And certainly Porsche Club of America has a very comprehensive website, and that will certainly tell you about the Porsche Club and what it does as well. But our local clubs, I think, are doing very good work, Mark. We give a lot of money to scholarships for kids for school, in vocational schools for automotive careers. By the way, we also, Mark, donate money to Western Washington University for their automotive program where they develop experimental cars. That's one of our biggest contributions that our club gives to them. We give them about $20,000 a year. So many times if you attend events in our region, Mark, we'll say, well, the event is $50, it's $75. Well, Mark, that money goes to one of our charitable arms, and that is to give money to, in this case, to Western Washington University. And the success that they have had over the years, Mark, I think we've given them a little over $200,000 over the time we've been supporting them, maybe over 10 years, I want to say, maybe 8 years. So those type of things, I think, are really interesting to the community. So go to our website, take a look at us. You can see Spiel there as well. You can take a look at our newsletter. You can hear all the great things that you and I have been talking about today.
Absolutely. I'll put all these links on Doug's show notes page. It'll be easy to find. And, even if you're not in the region that we are, you can still subscribe to the Pacific Northwest Porsche Club and get Spiel if you like it online or print, whatever you want. Doug will make it happen. Hey, Doug, thanks for spending some fun time with me today. Your inspiration is just never ending, my friend, and I'm so happy we're able to connect this way. Until you and I talk again, no doubt I'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.